more you chase someone, the faster you can lose yourself. Think about that. Maybe someone is pulling away from you, a partner, a friend, someone you love, someone you thought would always be there. At first, you notice small changes. They reply differently. They seem colder, more distant, less interested. You feel it before they ever say anything. Something has changed. And immediately, your mind begins searching for answers. Did I do something wrong? Are they upset? Are they losing interest? Is there someone else? Should I call them? Should I message them? Should I explain how I feel? Should I try harder? And little by little, you begin chasing. Not always physically, sometimes emotionally. You send another message. You ask another question. You give another chance. You explain yourself again. You become more available. You try to remind them of everything you've shared. You try to become more valuable to someone who is already treating you as less valuable. And this is where something dangerous happens. You stop asking, do I still want this relationship? And you begin asking, how do I make them want me? Those are completely different questions. One comes from self-respect. The other comes from fear. And fear can make you abandon yourself. Marcus Aurelius understood something nearly 2,000 years ago that remains painfully relevant today. You cannot force another person to choose you. You cannot force them to stay. You cannot force them to understand your value. You cannot control their feelings, their attention, their loyalty, their decisions. You can influence. You can communicate. You can love. You can be honest. But ultimately, another person's will belongs to them, and your attempt to control what was never yours to control is often where suffering begins. Today we're going to explore one of the hardest forms of Stoic strength, letting people go. Not because you never cared, not because you're cold, not because losing someone doesn't hurt, but because sometimes holding on costs more than letting go. We are going to talk about why chasing someone often creates the opposite result, why detachment is not indifference, why rejection can reveal where you've abandoned yourself, how to know when persistence becomes self-betrayal, and how to walk away without hatred, without revenge, and without losing your dignity trying to keep someone who has already chosen distance. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say to someone walking away is nothing. You let them go. Imagine this. Someone begins pulling away from you. You feel the distance. And because you care, you move closer. They take one step back. You take 2 steps forward. They become less available. You become more available. They send fewer messages. You send more. They give less effort. You compensate with more effort. They become uncertain. You become desperate to create certainty. And now, the entire balance of the relationship changes. You are no longer connecting. You are pursuing. They are no longer choosing. They are being convinced. And the harder you try, the more pressure enters the relationship. This creates a strange paradox. Your fear of losing someone can produce the exact behavior that pushes them further away. Why? Because desperation changes your energy. You stop being present. You become strategic. Every message has a purpose. Every conversation becomes an attempt to secure reassurance. Every silence becomes a threat. Every delay becomes evidence. Every interaction becomes, do you still want me? Are we okay? Do you still care? And the other person begins feeling the weight of a responsibility they cannot fulfill. The responsibility of constantly proving that you are safe. No human being can carry that responsibility forever, and neither should you give it to them. Stoicism teaches us to distinguish between what belongs to us and what does not. Your love belongs to you. Your loyalty belongs to you. Your effort belongs to you. Your honesty belongs to you. Your boundaries belong to you. But whether someone reciprocates, that belongs to them. This is where many people suffer. They believe that because they gave love, they should receive love. Because they were loyal, the other person should stay loyal. Because they invested years, the relationship should continue. Because they tried harder, the outcome should change. But life does not work according to emotional contracts. You can do everything right, and someone can still leave. You can love someone deeply, and they may no longer want the relationship. You can be loyal and still be betrayed. You can give your best and still be rejected. That reality is painful, but refusing to accept reality does not make it less real. It only extends the suffering. Marcus Aurelius practiced acceptance not because life was always fair, but because reality does not become easier when you argue with it. You can dislike what has happened. You can grieve it. You can wish it were different. But eventually, you have to meet reality where it is. Someone has changed. Someone no longer wants the same thing. Someone is not showing up. Someone keeps disappearing. Someone keeps choosing everything except the relationship they claim matters. At what point do you stop listening to words and begin observing behavior? This is difficult because hope is powerful, sometimes dangerously powerful. Hope tells you, maybe they'll change. Maybe they're just confused. Maybe they need time. Maybe if I show them how much I care, they'll remember. Maybe if I become more patient, more attractive, more successful, more understanding, less demanding, less emotional, more available, more distant, maybe then they'll choose me. And suddenly, you are redesigning yourself around another person's uncertainty. That is not love. That is self-abandonment. Real love should not require you to disappear in order to keep it alive. This doesn't mean relationships never require compromise. Of course they do. Healthy relationships require communication, patience, adjustment, sacrifice, forgiveness. But compromise means two people moving toward each other. Self-abandonment means one person keeps moving, while the other remains still. Know the difference, because many people call it loyalty, when what they really mean is fear of leaving. They say, I'm fighting for the relationship. But look carefully. Are both people fighting, or are you fighting alone? You cannot save a relationship alone. You cannot build intimacy alone. You cannot create trust alone. You cannot maintain connection alone. A relationship requires participation, and when only one person is carrying it, eventually they stop being a partner. They become a life support system. This is where Stoic detachment becomes powerful. Detachment does not mean, I never cared about you. It means, I care about you, but I will not destroy myself trying to control your decision. Read that inside your mind. I care about you, but I will not destroy myself trying to control your decision. That is maturity, because love without freedom becomes possession, and attachment without self-respect becomes dependency. Think about how often we confuse love with control. If you love me, stay. If you love me, respond faster. If you love me, choose me. If you love me, behave the way I need you to behave. But perhaps real love includes something much harder, the willingness to let another person make a choice, even when that choice hurts you. This doesn't mean their choice is good. It doesn't mean betrayal is acceptable. It doesn't mean disrespect should be tolerated. It simply means their actions belong to them, and your response belongs to you. This is the same principle we've been building throughout this journey. Someone disrespects you. You control your reaction. Someone misunderstands you. You control whether you keep explaining. Someone begins walking away. You control whether you abandon yourself trying to make them stay. Notice the pattern. Inner strength is not controlling other people. It is refusing to lose control of yourself because of other people. That is the work. And it may be some of the hardest work you ever do, because letting go is not a single moment. People imagine letting go as one dramatic decision. You delete the number, walk away, close the door, and suddenly you're free. Usually, it doesn't happen like that. You let go in pieces. You stop checking whether they messaged you. Then you check again. You stop looking at their social media. Then one lonely night, you look. You decide you're finished replaying the relationship. Then a song reminds you of them, a place, a smell, a date, a memory. And suddenly you're back inside the old story. This doesn't mean you failed. It means attachment has momentum. A relationship can end in reality, long before it ends inside your mind. This is why Stoicism emphasizes attention. Where your attention goes, your inner life follows. If someone is no longer in your life, but occupies 6 hours of your thoughts every day, they are still influencing your life, perhaps more than before. You must reclaim that attention, not violently, not by demanding that you never think about them again, but gradually, every time your mind returns to them. Ask yourself, is there something I need to do right now? If the answer is no, return to your life. Return to your work, your body, your responsibilities, your family, your goals, the present. Because grief often tries to pull you into 2 places that do not exist, the past and the imagined future. The past says, remember when everything was good? The imagined future says, what if they come back? What if they regret it? What if we fix everything? Meanwhile, your actual life is happening now, and you are missing it. There is something deeply Stoic about refusing to sacrifice the present to a past you cannot change, or a future you cannot control. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that the present moment was the only moment truly available to him. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, now. That applies to heartbreak too. You may not control what happened, but you still have today. You still have this morning, this afternoon, this hour, this decision. What will you do with it? Will you spend it rereading old messages, watching someone's online activity, creating imaginary conversations? Or will you invest it back into your own life? 1 hour may not feel important, but healing is built through hours, then days, then weeks, the same way attachment was built gradually. Detachment is often built gradually too. There is another painful reason we chase people. We confuse rejection with a verdict on our worth. Someone leaves, and we think, I wasn't enough. Someone chooses someone else, and we think, they're better than me. Someone stops loving us, and we think, something must be wrong with me. But one person's inability or unwillingness to choose you is not an objective measurement of your value. Think about that. Human attraction is not a court of law. Relationships are not mathematical equations. People choose based on compatibility, timing, their own wounds, their priorities, their desires, their fears, their maturity, their circumstances, their values, sometimes their poor judgment, and countless things you cannot see. Yet we take one person's choice and turn it into a universal statement. They don't want me, therefore I am unwanted. That is not logic, that is pain speaking. Someone can fail to see your value without your value changing. A person can walk past gold without recognizing it. The gold does not become less valuable. But be careful. This idea can become arrogance if misunderstood. You should still examine yourself. Perhaps you made mistakes. Perhaps you neglected the relationship. Perhaps you became controlling, emotionally unavailable, jealous, dishonest, unreliable. If so, learn, take responsibility, apologize if appropriate, improve yourself. Stoicism does not teach you to blame everyone else. But once you've honestly examined your actions, there comes a point where you must stop negotiating your worth. You can learn from rejection without becoming defined by rejection. That distinction is powerful. Ask yourself, what is this teaching me? Not, what does this prove about me? One question creates growth. The other creates identity from pain. Perhaps the relationship is teaching you that you ignored warning signs. Perhaps you abandoned your boundaries. Perhaps you depended too heavily on another person's attention. Perhaps you stayed because you feared being alone. Perhaps you confused intensity with compatibility. Perhaps you accepted inconsistency because occasional affection felt so powerful. Use the lesson. Don't become the wound. One of the most dangerous patterns in relationships is intermittent reinforcement. Someone gives you affection, then withdraws. They become warm, then cold, available, then distant, interested, then indifferent. And because the reward is unpredictable, your mind becomes even more attached. You begin chasing the next moment of affection. The good days become incredibly valuable because you don't know when another one will come. So you tolerate the bad days. You say, but when things are good, they're amazing. Be careful. Consistency matters. A relationship should not require emotional gambling. If you never know whether you're loved from one day to the next, the uncertainty itself may be what keeps you attached, not the quality of the relationship. This is where you must look at patterns, not moments. Anyone can be loving for a weekend. Anyone can apologize after hurting you. Anyone can promise change after you're ready to leave. The question is, what is the pattern? Marcus Aurelius valued character, because character is revealed through repeated action. The same principle applies to relationships. Do not judge someone exclusively by their most beautiful words. Watch their repeated behavior. Do they show up? Do they respect you? Are they honest? Do they take responsibility? Can you trust their actions? Do they bring stability into your life, or confusion? This doesn't mean relationships should always be easy, but difficult and unhealthy are not the same thing. Every deep relationship will experience difficulty, misunderstandings, stress, conflict, periods of distance. But healthy difficulty still contains mutual effort. Unhealthy difficulty often contains one person constantly wondering whether the other person cares at all. You should not have to perform emotional archaeology every day, searching for evidence that someone loves you. Sometimes the absence of clarity is clarity. That sentence hurts, but it can save years of your life. Sometimes the mixed signal is the signal. Sometimes indecision is a decision. Sometimes someone saying, "I don't know what I want," means you should know what you want. You want reciprocity, respect, consistency, clarity. And if they cannot provide those things, you are allowed to step away. Notice, allowed. Many people wait for permission to leave. They wait until the other person becomes cruel enough, until there is undeniable betrayal, until something dramatic happens. Because leaving someone you still love feels impossible to justify. But you do not need to hate someone to leave. You do not need to prove that they are a terrible person. Sometimes two people simply cannot build something healthy together. Sometimes love exists, but compatibility does not. Sometimes history exists, but trust is gone. Sometimes attraction exists, but peace does not. Sometimes you love someone and still need to leave. This is one of adulthood's hardest truths. Love is important, but love alone is not always sufficient. A relationship also needs respect, trust, communication, mutual effort, compatible values, boundaries, safety, and choice. Repeated choice. Not one person choosing for two. There is a phrase people often say, "Never give up on someone you love." It sounds noble, but like many beautiful phrases, it can become dangerous without wisdom. Should you never give up on someone who repeatedly betrays you, manipulates you, humiliates you, refuses responsibility, destroys your peace? Sometimes giving up on the fantasy is how you stop giving up on yourself. This is why Stoicism requires courage. Acceptance is not passive. Sometimes acceptance requires action. You accept that someone is not changing, and you leave. You accept that someone has chosen another path, and you stop chasing. You accept that the relationship is finished, and you grieve. You accept that you cannot receive the apology you wanted, and you create your own closure. You accept what is, instead of remaining addicted to what could be. Potential can become a prison. You don't love who they are. You love who they might become. You don't love the relationship you actually have. You love the relationship you imagine is possible. Once they heal, once they mature, once they commit, once they understand, once they stop doing that one thing, once life becomes easier, once. How long will you date someone's potential instead of their reality? This doesn't mean people cannot change. They can. You can. But change cannot be forced from the outside. You cannot love someone into maturity. You cannot beg someone into commitment. You cannot explain someone into respecting you. People change when they choose to change. Your task is to decide what you will do while they are who they are today, not who they may become in 5 years. Today, this is where boundaries become essential. A boundary is not, "You must change." A boundary is, "If this continues, this is what I will do." That difference matters. You cannot control their behavior, but you can control your participation. You cannot force someone to stop lying, but you can decide whether you remain in a relationship built on dishonesty. You cannot force someone to communicate, but you can decide whether chronic avoidance meets your needs. You cannot force someone to prioritize you, but you can stop prioritizing someone who repeatedly treats you as optional. That is not revenge, it is alignment. Your actions begin matching your values, and something remarkable happens when you stop chasing. You begin seeing clearly. When you're pursuing someone, your focus is constantly on them. What are they doing? What are they thinking? Will they come back? Do they miss me? What does that message mean? Why did they like that post? Who are they with? Did they see my story? Should I respond now or later? Your entire attention becomes externally focused. When you stop chasing, the attention returns. And suddenly, you can ask better questions. Why did I tolerate this? What was I afraid of? What did I ignore? What do I actually want? Who was I before this relationship became my identity? What parts of my life have I neglected? Those questions are uncomfortable, but they're useful. This is where heartbreak can become transformation. Not because heartbreak is good, but because pain often reveals what comfort allowed you to ignore. Maybe you discover that you built your entire self-worth around being chosen. Maybe you realize you have no life outside the relationship. Maybe you discover how afraid you are of solitude. Maybe you realize you consistently choose unavailable people because pursuing them feels familiar. Maybe the relationship exposes something you need to heal. Now you have a choice. You can use the pain to chase them, or use the pain to understand yourself. One path deepens dependency, the other builds strength. Marcus Aurelius often turned adversity into training, not because he wanted adversity, but because once it arrived, he asked what virtue it demanded from him. You can do the same. What does this loss require? Courage. Practice courage. Patience. Practice patience. Self-respect. Practice self-respect. Discipline. Practice discipline. Acceptance. Practice acceptance. Suddenly, the breakup is no longer only something happening to you. It becomes something you are working through. That subtle shift matters. You stop being completely passive. You begin participating in your own recovery. And recovery needs structure, especially after losing someone, because empty time can become dangerous when your mind is attached. You wake up, and the first thought is them. You go to sleep, and the last thought is them. Your routines were connected, your weekends, your messages, your plans. Now there are empty spaces everywhere, and if you don't intentionally fill those spaces, your mind fills them with memories. So rebuild your day, not to avoid your emotions, but to give your life structure while your emotions heal. Exercise, walk, read, work. Spend time with people who care about you. Return to interests you abandoned. Learn something, build something, clean your environment, sleep properly, eat properly. These things sound simple, but when your emotional world feels chaotic, simple disciplines become anchors. You do not heal only by thinking. You heal partly by living. Your body needs evidence that life is continuing. Your calendar needs evidence. Your habits need evidence. Every normal day tells your nervous system, we are still here. Life is still moving. And one day, you realize you went an hour without thinking about them. Later, an afternoon, then a day. Healing rarely announces itself. It happens quietly. This is why you must be patient. Do not judge yourself because you still miss someone. Missing someone does not mean you should return. Read that again. Missing someone does not mean you should return. It means you formed an attachment. That's human. You can miss someone and still know the relationship was wrong for you. You can love someone and still choose distance. You can remember beautiful moments without rewriting the entire relationship as beautiful. Memory can be selective, especially when you're lonely. Your mind begins creating highlights, the vacations, the laughter, the intimacy, the first months, the promises, and suddenly you forget the anxiety, the nights you couldn't sleep, the broken promises, the uncertainty, the disrespect, the loneliness you felt while still technically together. Be careful not to use your best memories to invalidate your worst experiences. See the whole picture, not with bitterness, with accuracy. Stoicism values clear perception. See things as they are, not worse, not better, as they are. Perhaps you lost something beautiful. Acknowledge it. Perhaps the relationship also became painful. Acknowledge that too. Two things can be true. You can love someone and know they're not right for you. You can be grateful for what happened and still be relieved it's over. You can forgive without reconciling. You can wish them well without reopening the door. Maturity can hold contradictions. You don't need to turn someone into a villain just because the relationship ended. This is important. Sometimes people believe hatred will make letting go easier, so they replay every bad memory. They insult the person. They try to convince themselves, I never loved them anyway. But hatred is still attachment. If you hate someone obsessively, they still occupy your mind. Real freedom is quieter. You reach the point where you do not need them to suffer. You don't need them to regret losing you. You don't need their next relationship to fail. You don't need them to see how successful you've become. You don't need revenge. You simply want your life back. That is detachment. Imagine someone leaves you, and for 6 months you dedicate your entire transformation to making them regret it. You exercise so they'll see, make money so they'll see, travel so they'll see, post pictures so they'll see, improve yourself so they'll see. Who still controls you? They do. Even absent, they remain the audience. Your growth is still organized around them. There is nothing wrong with pain motivating you initially. Sometimes anger gets you moving, but eventually, the reason must change. Build because you want the life. Train because you respect your body. Work because you have goals. Grow because you refuse to remain the same person. Do it for you. Otherwise, revenge becomes another form of dependence. You haven't let them go. You've simply changed how you chase them. This time, you're chasing their regret. Let that go too. There is a deeper level of letting go. Let go of the fantasy that one day they will fully understand what they lost. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. Maybe they regret everything. Maybe they're completely happy without you. You don't control that. And more importantly, it doesn't need to matter. Your life cannot wait for a verdict from your past. There is work to do now. The Stoic approach is always returning responsibility to the correct place. What is mine? My choices, my response, my values, my effort, my direction. What is not mine? Their thoughts, their regret, their new relationship, their interpretation, their future. Return what is theirs. Keep what is yours. That mental separation is freedom, and perhaps you're listening to this while thinking, but what if they come back? Good question. Letting go does not require predicting the future. Maybe they return. Maybe they apologize. Maybe they change. If that happens, you evaluate reality when reality arrives. Not fantasy today. Do not pause your life preparing for a hypothetical return. If they come back, look at behavior, not words. What changed? How long has it changed? Have they taken responsibility? Is trust rebuildable? Do your values align? Do you actually want them back? Or do you simply want relief from rejection? That final question is crucial. Sometimes we desperately want someone back, not because the relationship was good, but because their return would repair our ego. If they come back, then I wasn't rejected. If they regret it, then I was valuable. If they choose me again, then I win. Be careful. Your worth does not need a reunion as evidence. Perhaps the greatest victory is becoming someone who no longer needs the person who once made you question yourself. Not because you are superior, because you are whole again. There is one more difficult truth. Sometimes you're not actually trying to hold on to the person. You're trying to hold on to who you were with them, the version of yourself from that period, the future you imagined, the home you planned, the trips, the family, the promises, the identity. When a relationship ends, you don't only lose a person, you may lose an imagined future. And grieving an imagined future can be extremely painful, because it never had the chance to disappoint you. The fantasy remains perfect. You imagine what could have happened. But remember, the future you imagined was never guaranteed. None of our futures are. Stoicism teaches us to appreciate without ownership, to love without pretending permanence is promised. Everything changes. People change. Bodies change. Circumstances change. Life changes. This isn't pessimistic. It is precisely what makes appreciation meaningful. If everything were guaranteed forever, we would take everything for granted. Impermanence gives urgency to gratitude. Love people while they are here. Treat them well. Be present. But don't build the illusion that life owes you permanence. It doesn't. Marcus Aurelius knew this intimately. He experienced enormous personal loss throughout his life. He understood that nothing human remains untouched by change. The answer was not to stop loving. The answer was to love with awareness. Appreciate without pretending you own. That is difficult, but it creates a different kind of strength. You stop saying, "You are mine," and begin saying, "I am grateful for the time we share, and if life changes, I will meet that change when it comes." This does not eliminate grief. Stoicism is not emotional anesthesia. Loss hurts, rejection hurts, betrayal hurts. The goal is not to become incapable of pain. The goal is to stop multiplying pain through resistance. Pain says, "They're gone." Resistance says, "They shouldn't be gone." Pain says, "This hurts." Resistance says, "I cannot survive this." Pain says, "I miss them." Resistance says, "I need them back to be okay." That second layer often creates the greatest suffering. So when the pain comes, feel it. You don't need to pretend. Sit with it. Walk with it. Write about it. Talk to someone trustworthy. Cry if you need to cry. But while you feel it, do not turn emotion into instruction. Missing them is a feeling. It is not an order to call. Loneliness is a feeling. It is not an order to return. Jealousy is a feeling. It is not an order to monitor. Fear is a feeling. It is not an order to chase. Feelings provide information. They do not automatically deserve authority. That is one of the central lessons of Stoicism. You can feel something intensely and still choose differently. That is strength. The next time you want to contact someone who repeatedly chose distance, pause. Ask yourself, what am I hoping this message gives me? Clarity, connection, validation, relief? If the answer is relief, understand something. The relief may last 10 minutes. Then the anxiety returns. You cannot permanently soothe abandonment by repeatedly contacting the person whose inconsistency created it. At some point, you need to become the source of stability you are asking them to provide. That means keeping promises to yourself. You say you won't check. Don't check. You say you'll focus on your work. Focus. You say this is the last time you'll accept disrespect. Mean it. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you rebuild self-trust. And self-trust is essential after you've spent months ignoring your own instincts. Maybe you knew, deep down, you knew something was wrong. But you stayed, you ignored it, explained it away, gave another chance, then another. Now you may be angry with yourself. Don't waste that anger. Learn from it. Ask, what did I know that I refused to accept? Your intuition is not perfect, but patterns matter. If someone's behavior repeatedly makes you feel confused, anxious, unwanted, or unsafe, do not automatically assume you are simply too sensitive. Investigate, communicate, observe. And if the pattern continues, believe the pattern. Actions reveal priorities. This doesn't mean becoming suspicious of everyone. It means developing discernment. Self-respect is not, I never get hurt. Self-respect is, when reality becomes clear, I respond accordingly. You don't stay forever because you're afraid to start over. You don't beg because you're afraid of loneliness. You don't lower your standards because you miss someone's attention. And you don't chase someone who repeatedly demonstrates that they do not want to be caught. There is dignity in allowing people to leave. Open the door. Not sarcastically, not dramatically, not as manipulation, but genuinely. If someone truly wants another life, you cannot build a healthy relationship by trapping them in yours. Let them choose. And then, pay attention to your own choice. Choose yourself. This phrase is often used casually. Choose yourself. But what does it actually mean? It means choosing your peace over chaos, choosing truth over fantasy, choosing boundaries over temporary affection, choosing self-respect over begging, choosing growth over obsession, choosing the present over replaying the past, choosing a difficult reality over a comforting lie. That is what it means. And sometimes choosing yourself is lonely at first. Because the wrong relationship can still feel more familiar than no relationship. Do not confuse familiarity with safety. You may miss what hurt you simply because you knew how to live inside it. The unknown can feel terrifying. Who will I become now? What will my life look like? Will I find someone else? Will I ever feel that way again? You don't need those answers today. Stoicism does not require certainty. It requires action based on what is in front of you. Today, you wake up. You handle today. Tomorrow, you handle tomorrow. You do not need the next 5 years mapped out to take one healthy step. This is how you rebuild, one decision at a time, and one day, you will look back at the version of yourself who was begging someone to stay and feel compassion, not embarrassment. Compassion, because that person was afraid. They thought losing someone meant losing everything. They didn't yet know how much life existed beyond that relationship. They didn't know they would laugh again, feel peace again, love again, become stronger. They didn't know, but you will. And perhaps one day, you will even feel gratitude. Not gratitude for the pain itself, but gratitude for what the pain forced you to discover. Your boundaries, your standards, your independence, your strength, your ability to survive something you once thought would destroy you. That is transformation. And this is where the lesson becomes larger than relationships. You will have to let go many times in life. People, jobs, identities, dreams, versions of yourself, expectations, places, seasons. Nothing stays exactly the same. If you try to freeze life, life will break your grip. The Stoic answer is not indifference. It is adaptability. You participate fully. And when change arrives, you change with reality, instead of spending years demanding that reality return to what it was. This may be one of the hardest forms of wisdom, but it is also one of the most liberating. So if someone is walking away from you right now, listen carefully. Do not chase them into abandoning yourself. If there is something honest that needs to be said, say it. If you made a mistake, Acknowledge it. If there is a conversation worth having, have it. But after clarity, watch what they choose. Do not negotiate with someone's repeated unwillingness. Do not audition for a position in someone's life that you already earned through your character. Do not convince someone to value what they repeatedly treat as optional. Do not beg for basic respect. And do not make another person's departure a declaration of your worth. Let them choose. Then you choose too. Choose dignity. Choose reality. Choose growth. Choose peace. Let them go. Not because you hate them, not because you never cared, but because love cannot survive without freedom, and your self-respect cannot survive endless pursuit. Remember this: the right people in your life may require effort, but they will not require you to abandon yourself. You should not have to become smaller to keep someone. You should not have to beg for consistency. You should not have to decode whether someone wants you every day. You should not have to destroy your peace to preserve a relationship. And you should never have to chase someone so far that when you finally stop, you no longer recognize yourself. Come back to yourself. That is where your work begins. Your body, your mind, your purpose, your values, your responsibilities, your future, the parts of you that existed before them, and the parts of you waiting to be built after them. Return. And when your mind says, "What if they forget me?" ask, "Why am I forgetting myself?" When your mind says, "What if they find someone better?" ask, "Why am I measuring myself through their choice?" When your mind says, "What if they never come back?" say, "Then I will keep moving forward." Not because it's easy, because it's mine to do. That is the Stoic response. You cannot control who stays. You cannot control who leaves. You cannot control who understands your value. But you can control whether you continue giving your life to someone who has already stopped choosing it. And you can control what happens next. So let them go. Let them walk their path. Let them make their decisions. Let them discover whatever they believe they need to discover. And you, return to your own life. Return to your principles. Return to your discipline. Return to your peace. You may still miss them. That's okay. You may still love them. That's okay. You may still have days when the memories hurt. That's okay too. Healing does not require pretending. It requires continuing, one day at a time, one decision at a time, one act of self-respect at a time, until eventually you stop waking up thinking about who left and begin waking up thinking about who you are becoming. That is when you know something has changed. You are no longer chasing. You are building. You are no longer begging. You are choosing. You are no longer waiting for them to recognize your worth. You recognize it. And perhaps that was the lesson all along. If this message found you at the right moment, subscribe to Inner Strength. This channel is about developing the discipline, wisdom, courage, and self-control needed to remain strong when life tests you. In our first lesson, we learned not to surrender our emotions when someone disrespects us. Then we learned to stop explaining ourselves to people committed to misunderstanding us. Today, we learned something even harder. Stop chasing people who are already walking away. But there is another form of strength we haven't explored yet: silence. Because there are moments when speaking makes you weaker, when defending yourself gives your opponent more power, when revealing everything on your mind becomes a mistake, and sometimes the person who says the least sees the most. In the next video, we're going to explore 7 situations where the Stoics would tell you to stay silent. Until then, protect your attention, protect your dignity, protect your peace. And remember, if someone wants to leave, you do not have to chase them. Let them go, and use that energy to find yourself again.